That's all we're going on now.
We don't have to have a record of how many people are here.
There's no designer.
I just genuinely wonder if you and I would differ.
And then we also have some materials for the agenda.
I'm always willing to visit with people and agree to disagree. I have no problem. I have to represent the city residents. Yes.
But
We'll see what I can do in 2 weeks. I'm sure. I've been interviewing daily with all types of professionals over this throughout the country here and so the Bay Area. Just on my own for information. Tonight, hopefully, we can share quite a bit of this, environmental stuff. There's some data right there. Okay. Get close. All right, we'll stay in touch.
You live in Burlingame? No.
Would you like an agenda?
Okay. Sure. But I think we
Small
made
fact sheet about the project.
You're the new project manager. Anything else?
Do you have a comment card? If you're interested in submitting a comment?
yeah, I would feel
I'm already
Oh, well, you would mind just signing your name and have a record of how many people are here.
Let me introduce myself. Hi, I'm Rob Salter. Hi, Jules. Sweet Jim, project manager.
There you go. Thank you very much, sir. Okay. And would you like an agenda? Sure. There you go. Thank you. And there's a comment card.
Around here a little bit more.
That's right.
Hi, excuse me. Hi, I just want to introduce myself.
Someone has seen the back of the bus here, and I should have I'm usually more in the front of the bus.
I'll start the show side real quick and see if I got those. You set up in front of their camp, the picture.
Good. Nice to meet you.
I've lost him. It's so much more powerful than everything. Listen, dang, going up with that guy, nobody.
You guys had to
No, I couldn't figure what I was looking at.
Boy, that was disrespectful.
Hey, we put it that way.
That shit all your life?
And then Bush bought it in Texas. Oh, that was the first one. Frank Howard. Yeah. Real.
Okay, we're going to get the meeting started. Let's give the attention to the mayor.
Thank you. Okay, Rob. So good evening, and thank you all for coming to this scoping meeting put on by our professional team here. First, I'd like to introduce our city staff. We have Deputy City Manager Alex is here, and our new absolutely wonderful person we're happy to have on board, Dante. So we have two of our staff members here to help get things rolling. This is the first of two we will have this week here. And by law, and I think the experts will tell us in this process, we have to have these public forums. And so we're going to do it. So for me, I'm going to have it's not a council meeting. This is strictly opportunity for our professionals to give the scoping of the environmental work. And you'll be able to ask them questions. Our facilitator tonight has a great professional record of hosting and coordinating these meetings, so we're very happy to have Eileen Goodwin, and she will kind of coordinate the whole meeting. She's in charge, I'm not, and she will introduce the rest of our experts here tonight, and we'll move on from there, and then you'll give them the ground rules on participating. So,
absolutely.
Thank you, Eileen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So thank you very much for being on time and coming out this evening. We really appreciate it. As the mayor mentioned, this is the first of two opportunities for the scoping meeting. The second one is going to be held on Saturday, and it's here at 10 o'clock in the morning. So hopefully you've had a chance to pick up the flyer fact sheet. So definitely want to call your attention to that. We also had a sign-in list that was on a clipboard. That is to please sign in, and if you add your information, the team and city staff will add you to the database for the project. That means as future meetings and future things happen, that's an easy way to let you know, for example, when the draft environmental document is available, when other meetings might be occurring, and as various milestones are reached. So you definitely want to sign up for the email list and the mail list. And then tonight, hopefully you notice that there's a comment form. And because we are doing a scoping meeting, we will be asking you to fill out the form. Now, there's two things you can do. One is you can say, I will be making an oral comment, and if you give me your name and just pass that forward, I will be happy to call on you in the order that I get these. You can make your comments. While you see that we do have a television or a videotape recording tonight, that's being done by private folks from the community. That is not an official city recording of the meeting tonight. We do have an audio recording that is part of the formal process that we're doing, and so that microphone that's right there should be able to pick up everybody. But I am going to ask you to speak up so that we can make sure that our formal record of the meeting captures everything. Matt's going to help us out on the PowerPoint, both going through this as well as during the public comment session. We'll be giving you each 2 minutes to start, and then you'll see a countdown, and I'll go over this again closer to the actual public comment period. And then if you run out of time, and because there's not a huge group here tonight, what I'll do is ask you if you would, if you want to go again and finish your thought, we'll get through everyone for the first time, depending on how many people speak, and we'll get you back up and make sure you get your comment finished. But again, that's going to require you to reintroduce yourself so we can match up the comments together so that our team can respond to those and get you that information as it's developed in the environmental process. So it's always really helpful to city staff and project team to find out a little bit about the audience so that we can find out what's working and what isn't as far as meeting noticing. I was told that there were several ways that the meeting was noticed tonight, and because there's not a huge turnout, I'm very curious to see what worked and what maybe didn't work so well as far as getting the word out. And please feel free to raise your hand for more than one of these. So how many of you are here because you got a postcard either at your business or your home? So I see a couple, 3, 4 hands, thank you. Hopefully somebody's recording this. I think Daisy's taking, maybe signing people in. Maybe if we could get one of you to just scratch this down in addition to that, because it's sometimes hard when I have the hands up. I know there was an ad in the paper. Did anybody see the ad in the paper? Okay, a couple similar hands, a different person, that's great. I know there was an email blast out to people who had signed up for a former mailing list. So did anybody get an email directly from the city? A couple of you are here for that, well, 3 sounds like. And again, those are different people, which is a little different from the people who got the postcard and from the people who saw the ad. And then I know it was on community television. Anybody see that? Community TV? 1, okay. And I always ask this too. How many of you are here because somebody who's not related to the city told you about the meeting? Anybody here because of that? Okay, you got that as well. So I know there's sometimes other homeowner groups or other ways that people, merchants associations, that sort of thing, get the word out. So that's super helpful. And then again, just getting a sense of the audience and how much you know about the project. I know there was a meeting in November of 2012. Was anybody here at that meeting? It was a meeting that talked about the bridge. Okay, about half the room, great. And then my understanding is there were 2 meetings held in February of 2013 at the same time, a morning and evening meeting. How many people were, and that was more of a workshop format. Oh, a lot of people were at that, so maybe 3/4 of the audience, but not everybody. So that's very, very helpful. If we could advance it, Matt, that would be great. So I wanted to next introduce our team here, and I'm going to start with the person immediately next to me. This is Rob Kalkbrenner. He is the project manager for the city of Half Moon Bay, and he is the liaison with the city who is directing and working most closely with the project team, who I'm about ready to introduce. You already met Alex, who's the deputy city manager, and Dante Hall is your new community development director. So he'll be probably getting more up to speed as he is, I guess, in week number 3, so probably doesn't know everything, so it's great that he's here to learn about the project tonight. Ramsey Hisson is here. Ramsey will be speaking in just a moment. He's our lead engineer on the project, and he works for a company called URS, and you'll be hearing from him, and I think maybe some of you probably recognize him, those of you who were attending the meetings back in 2012 and 2013, because Ramsey was at both of those meetings. John Hessler is our lead for the environmental document. He works for a firm called David Powers and Associates. So he is not David, his name's John. And John Hessler has the job to take all the scoping comments and take all the technical reports and put that into a readable document that will be available for public comment. And he'll explain how he pulls that all together in just a bit as part of our presentation before we take public comment tonight. And then finally, we have Mike Caravillaggio. Mike is an expert in historic structures, and we've asked him to come because obviously your bridge is something that would fit into that category, and Mike has had an opportunity to do a little bit of research on the bridge, so he's available for some question and answer time. I don't believe you're actually speaking to any of the slides, but we wanted him here as a resource. So while we're here for a scoping meeting, and as I have been introduced as your hearing officer, facilitator, etc., I like to say I'm really the air traffic controller. So that means that I really need to make sure that, especially John and Ramsey get an opportunity to get through all the slides. Then we're going to take the public comment, but if there's questions that we can answer tonight, and there may not be questions. I mean, I'm sure there's going to be questions we can't answer tonight, but if there's questions that we have answers to tonight, we'll do our best to get that information to you. And then if there's questions that involve research and all that, we'll be letting you know that, and we'll make sure that we put that out as the appropriate way to get those questions to you, some of which will come in the environmental document, and some questions, quite frankly, may not really belong in the environmental document as far as where we get the answers. We'll have to figure out a way to get back on that. The PowerPoint we're going to be using tonight will be loaded up on the city website, and we'll hope to get that up this week. We will be using the exact same PowerPoint and our same experts this Saturday at the meeting at 10 o'clock. So especially because we have a light turnout tonight, please let your neighbors, your family members, your business colleagues know about the meeting on Saturday so that we can make sure that people have an opportunity to weigh in and tell us what they want to see covered in the environmental document. Because this is really your opportunity to give input into the project. We're at the very, very beginning of a fairly long process. So we want to make sure that everybody who has an opinion gets an opportunity to get that into the team so it can be considered. I think I've done everything that I intended to as far as the housekeeping. Just one other item. You're probably familiar with this facility, but if not, I understand the ladies' room and men's room is around behind the screen. Please feel free to take a rolling break because there isn't an organized break here this evening. We'll go straight from the PowerPoint into the public comment period. And given just again the size of the crowd, it would be very unlikely that we would be staying here all the way till 9 o'clock. So just to give you some idea of our timing. So does anybody have any questions about the format or how we're going to run this evening? Does everybody have an opportunity to have a comment card so far? And if I could just ask for a show of hands so I can kind of be mentally thinking about how many of you are planning to speak this evening versus just hand in your comments in a written form, because we'll take those as well, and that would be just as the same. Okay, so we've got maybe just very few people. Okay, well maybe something will inspire you when we get Ramsey and John up here that you want to make a comment or ask a question about. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ramsey Hissett, who is going to come up and speak to this first. Oh wait, I've got a couple more. Sorry, I've already sort of gone through without my slides. A couple things. We're here to review the need and the objectives of the Main Street Bridge project. We're also here to present an overview of some of the alternatives so that you can see what's being considered to be put under environmental review. We're going to be providing an overview of the environmental process, and really that part is John. John's going to explain how he puts together an environmental document, what types of topics are covered, how long it takes generally, and that sort of thing. And then, as I already mentioned, we'll be listening to your comments and questions, or gathering them as just written comments if that's how you'd like to give them in, because some people don't like to speak in public, and that's perfectly acceptable just to give us comments. Although we do ask that you leave your name with us if you could. It's well known, I think, that this project has some individuals who are not supportive of moving forward with a new bridge. And they have voiced their opposition, and they have begun a process to put something on the ballot. And the council became aware of that, and I've been informed that on February 18th, the council deliberated about the signature gathering process, the potential time and delay that might take, as well as their desire to hear from the public on this issue. So it's my understanding at the meeting on February 18th that the council determined that they would go ahead and place 2 ballot initiatives on this June's ballot. So that is what is going on with regard to the ballot measure. I know some of you might have heard about that out in the public, and you're probably well aware that there's going to be 2 measures going forward in your June ballot. So make sure that you get an opportunity to learn about those and vote. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ramsey.
A lot of this information, I think a lot of you know, I'll go over it. This is one of the first reinforced concrete bridge in San Mateo County. It was built in about 1900. It's approximately 80 feet long, carries 2 12-foot lanes of traffic, and downstream the sidewalk was added in the 40s, and it carries a water main on it. Upstream the sidewalk was placed in about 1991. And the bridge is on the Half Moon Bay Historic Resources and is eligible for the National Register of Historic Places. Next, please. This project, or this bridge, is inspected by the state every 2 years. It's a requirement. Legislation required that Caltrans inspects this bridge every 2 years. And the bridge inspection reports that we have on file go back to 1941. So from 1941 to about 1956, we have reports. And there was a gap between 56 and 79 where we were not able to see any reports. The inspections were turned over back to the county. But 79, again, the reports are available. And currently, the sufficiency rating is 24 out of 100. And back there, there's a chart, if you'd like to see after the presentation, that shows the sufficiency rating of the bridge and how it has fared over the past few years. As a lot of people know, there's heavy cracking between the arch and the sidewalls. There's offset in cracks in the wing walls. And one of the wing walls actually collapsed in the 1940s, in the early 40s, based on one of the bridge reports, inspection reports. It fell, and they put riprap up there. And again, there's a summary, again, right next to that chart, there's a summary of the inspection reports available. There's corrosion on the brackets supporting the water main and the sidewalks. There's water leaching through the concrete. And there are some issues with the no shoulders and inadequate width for bike lanes, and sidewalks are not ADA compliant. And there's an issue with the sight distance. As you're coming from the north, you can't really see a good vision of downstream of the traffic. The primary purpose of this project is to address existing deficiencies, to achieve a crossing that is safe, efficient, reliable for the long term. Okay, we're looking at basically, when the project is done, a bridge that is structurally sufficient based on current design and seismic safety criteria. Another criteria we have, we want to maintain 1 lane of traffic during construction. We want to use federal funding to minimize the impact on the fiscal responsibility of the city, avoid and minimize construction impacts, minimize and avoid environmental impacts to Palacito Creek ecosystem, and also to the historic bridge. So with that, we have 3 alternatives that we're looking at. One is do nothing. The other alternative is to rehab the bridge and widen it to address the deficiencies. And the third alternative is a replacement option. With that, I'd like to turn it over to John.
Well, good evening, everybody. My purpose in being here is I want to walk you through the environmental process, and there is a lot of misinformation about what the environmental process does and does not do. And I just want to explain a couple of things to you, because we're embarking on a process that is going to be at least 2 years in length going forward.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I didn't get your name or who you are.
Yes, my name is John Hessler, and I work for a firm called David Powers and Associates, and I'm on the team in the role of leading the preparation of all the environmental studies. So one of the things I really want to stress, and I'm going to be talking about this a lot, is this is the beginning of the process. There's a lot of information going on. The decision has already been made. All kinds of stuff floating out there. I am here to say categorically that is not true. And the reason I'm saying that is going to be evident when I walk you through what the process is. So there's a number of very important laws. The first one, the California Environmental Quality Act. You probably hear it's called CEQA. That's where EIRs come from, that law. The National Environmental Policy Act, that's the federal version of the first law. Those two laws are all about one thing and one thing only, and that is disclosure, disclosure, disclosure. Our job is, before anything happens anywhere on any project, all the facts get out. We don't take sides, we don't say we like this, we don't like this. It's just getting information out there. And we have a team of experts to prepare all these studies. So that is the whole purpose of this, is so information is out there so that when the decision is made, nobody can raise their hand and say, geez, I wish I had known about something. Now, in addition, and this is going to be very important for this project, there's the National Historic Preservation Act and there's the Department of Transportation Act. Those are coming into play because the project is going to use federal funds. So because we're using federal funds, Congress has said you can't spend any kind of federal funds on a project if there are historic resources until you look at what are the impacts of those historic resources, how can you avoid them, how can you mitigate them. Then there is another law called the Department of Transportation Act. This goes all the way back to 1966. This is very few people know about this, but it is an extremely important law because it says the Secretary of Transportation shall not should not, but shall not use any federal funds, approve any federal funds on any project that affects a public recreation area or historic resource unless there are no prudent and feasible alternatives. And if there are no prudent or feasible alternatives, and there are multiple alternatives, and each one affects a historic structure, under that law, the decision must be made to choose the alternative with the lesser impact on historic resources. So in this case, why am I spending time on this? Is because I want everybody to know this is part of the process we're embarking on. Is everybody knows the bridge is historic. It's on Half Moon Bay's list. It's eligible for the National Register. It's been formally nominated. It's probably going to be listed. So that's a given. So part of the process that we're embarking on is looking at ways to correct the deficiencies and at the same time have the least impact on the historic nature of the bridge. So just to get right to the bottom line, if there are two alternatives, one is demolition and the other is some modifications to the bridge, both may impact the historic bridge, but all other factors being equal, if federal money is to be used, federal money will not be granted unless the widening or the rehab is selected. That is a given. And what I'm saying, it does not apply to all projects. If we were doing state money only, it would be, we would still have to go through this process, but it would not be quite as strong as it is under the Department of Transportation Act. So you can see just from the get-go There's a lot of requirements, and I'm gonna go through here. You get, why are we here? Why do we do any kind of environmental document? It's to get information out there. Looking at alternatives. Lots of times an agency or a developer will come in and they have, here's what I want to do. Well, our job is to say, well, there may be other ways to get to that same outcome with lesser environmental impacts. And if there are, it's my job as an author of those documents to say to the council or board of supervisors, whoever the decision maker is, yeah, by the way, you can meet your objectives and do it in a lot less harmful way. Here's an alternative that might be viable. That's my job, is to put that out. We have to use experts. It's not just me sitting up and saying, well, I think this or that. You know, we have biologists, archaeologists, historians, traffic engineers, geologists, hydrologists. It's a team of experts. And then, the whole reason we're here tonight, public input. Extremely important. I know some people at these meetings that have been doing these a long time will say, does it make any difference? Blah, blah, blah. I can tell you categorically, many projects, what people have to say, and the input into the process makes a big difference in the outcome. So again, and I'm going to be talking in a minute about not just tonight, but there's going to be multiple opportunities for input. So these are just some of the issues that we're going to be looking at. Obviously, we're over Pillorcitos Creek. We've got California red-legged frogs, San Francisco garter snake, both are endangered. We've got steelhead endangered. We've got the riparian corridor of the creek. A lot of agencies are very concerned about any kind of impacts. That's the biology. Of course, hydrology, archaeology, and historic. We've already talked about historic. Noise. How much noise during construction? How long will it be? What time of day? What will the noise levels be? Air quality. How much dust and other disturbance during construction? Traffic, especially during construction. Those are always very critical issues for projects of this nature. So here is just, there's probably more, but here are the ones off the top of my head, some of the agencies that are going to have input into this process. Of course, number one at the top, the city council. It's a city-owned and operated bridge. The city has a very important role, obviously. But Caltrans is involved, and the reason Caltrans is involved is because the federal money is basically channeled through Caltrans. It comes from Congress through the Federal Highway Administration. Caltrans is trusted with administering that program and making sure all the requirements. So you've heard that, you know, we're talking to Caltrans. That's because they are kind of, while they're not the decision makers, they're involved in making sure that the local agencies, in this case the city, complies with all of the requirements and all of the processes that I'm talking about. So they're going to be kind of overseeing some of this, but they're not going to say, you know, this is our decision. So that's their role. Of course, the State Historic Preservation Office, because it's on the National Register, they are already involved. We're going to continue coordinating their determination, going back to where I started, about an alternative with the least effect on a historic resource. They're experts. They're going to weigh in very strongly on that. So they're going to have a key role. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, as I said, we got 3 endangered species. They have what they call a consultation role. They don't make decisions, but we have to consult with them. The Army Corps of Engineers, we're going to need a permit to do any kind of work in the creek. So that comes from the Army Corps of Engineers, which in turn, anytime you need something from the Army Corps, you automatically have to go down and get another permit from the Regional Water Quality Control Board. And we've got to get another permit from the California Department of Fish and Wildlife. It used to be called Fish and Game. They changed their name last year. And then finally, we're in a coastal zone, California Coastal Commission. So you can see there is going to be a huge amount of input into the process as we go forward. So back to why we're here tonight. Lots of opportunities. Tonight is just the first of many. So after we leave here tonight and Saturday morning, get all your input, the next step for the team is to start really working on some of the alternatives and looking at what are the ways to have a safe, reliable crossing, recognizing we have all these competing things going on, the environmental, the historic, maintaining access during construction for the downtown community, right? There's all these things, and we've got design requirements, so we're going to come up with a bunch of alternatives. We're going to go public with those again to get input before we get too far down the road. So we anticipate having some ideas to show you late spring. By the way, a postscript. At the earlier meetings, you were shown some ideas. A lot of those are probably going to change now that we have a lot more information. So going forward, have an open mind. We're looking at a lot of things. And as Eileen said earlier, we have Mike on the team. Mike is a renowned expert on helping people work with historic resources and coming up with designs that either avoid impacts, or if you have to have some impacts, how to minimize those impacts and incorporate features into the project so that at the end of the day, it may not be exactly like it was, but you try to do as much as you can. So anything you want to add to that, Mike?
Are you going to talk a little bit about the Secretary standards for rehabilitation?
Could you say a couple words about that real quickly?
Yeah, these, the processes, public input processes and the environmental review looks to, they talk about compliance and finding mitigations. The main lens by which these types of projects are viewed for how to rehabilitate the historic bridge are dealt with through something called the Secretary of Interior Standards for Rehabilitation. So the National Park Service set up decades ago, it was back in the late 60s, early 70s, where these were refined. And it basically talks about how to preserve the historic significance of in the case of the bridge, but any structure, so that you maintain its historic significance, the essence of its historic significance, looking at its what we call character-defining features, and how to modify or repair those elements and potentially change them as necessary, bring the resource, could be a bridge, a building, a landscape, up to reasonable current standards. So that concept of rehabilitation is providing an updated or repaired historic resource. And that's the methodology, the lens that the entire industry looks at how these things work and whether they comply or not. That's what the Office of Historic Preservation is going to be looking at. That's what the federal agencies are going to be looking at, how this process, the identification of the alternatives has essentially encompassed and utilized the standards for rehabilitation. So that's my role.
Thank you, Mike. So, as I said, that we were going to come back with a lot more information, hopefully late spring if everything goes according to schedule. Then we move into the preparation of the environmental document in earnest. That's where we have all the biologists and all the other specialists doing their thing. They put together the studies, Caltrans has to review them, goes through a lot of internal drafts. Finally, everything gets put into the draft environmental document. We think, according to schedule, we're anticipating that's going to be ready the summer of next year. When it's ready, it goes out for public circulation, 45 days. That's the time when everybody gets to write in their formal comments on the draft. And why do we do that? We want you to look at it and say, geez, you guys missed this. There was a whole impact over here, you forgot about it. Our job then is to go back and prepare responses. And if you point out something that we missed, we are obligated under the law to give a good faith response to that comment. And it goes into the final document, and then the analysis gets changed to reflect the information we were given. So even after all of this, if we publish something and there's still a problem, there is a huge opportunity for input. And by the way, all those agencies I listed, as well as a lot of other ones, you know, the local sheriff's department, Samtran, San Mateo agencies, they're all going to be reviewing the document at the same time. So that's all roughly next summer. Then we put together the final, and everything goes how we think it will. We're probably going to be out with the final document in early 2016. You know, maybe it might slip a little bit, but roughly that's the time frame. When that final document is out, there's still further opportunity to comment. And go to the council and say, you know what, they still screwed up, they didn't do this right, or whatever your comments are, there's another opportunity. Once all of this is done, then the decision is made. So you can see no decision is going to be made before 2016. So then when you factor in some right-of-way needs and final design, we're probably at the earliest not looking, if a project other than no project is approved, it being, what, 2017, 2018 maybe?
2017.
2017 for any construction. I mean, I'm just giving you ballparks. So anyway, I hope that was helpful and useful, and I hope you guys got the basic message of why we're here and how important this is, and that we're going to be trying extremely hard to provide this community with the best analysis, and we're going to be looking at everything. You know, you have my word, my guarantee on that. I mean, that's why we're here. This is very, very important. So I'm sure you guys will have questions, but in the meantime, thank you.
Thanks, John. All right, I noticed we had a few folks who didn't get a chance to hear the very beginning of, if we could get to the next one. So what we're doing tonight is we have some comment forms, and I'm proud to say we already have one that's filled out, so we already have at least one speaker tonight. This comment form, if you know that you're going to be making an oral comment, you check the box and give me your name, and I'll just call you up and we'll get you to have your comment. If you don't want to speak in the group tonight, but you want to leave a comment, there's a comment card area that you can do that. And you get comment cards from Daisy. She's against the wall there with the floral top. On the back, we've also thought, because we've got some time to collect these comments, as I mentioned earlier, there's a meeting on Saturday, but we'll be taking comments through the end of the month. So if some of you do some of your better thinking after you've had an opportunity to chew on it for a while, this handy form turns into something you can just stick a stamp on and send it right back if you decide to do it. There's also ways to send in comments via the internet, email, there's a fax number. That information is also at the bottom here, or no, I'm sorry, on the side here of your comment form. So all that information, you don't need to copy it down, but it will be up on the website when we post the PowerPoint, but it's right here on the form, just to make it simple. Fax, mail, email, comment orally tonight, and we're capturing it on our tape recorder of the meeting, or leave it in writing tonight, and we'll make sure that John gets it so he can start his work. So any questions about how to get comments? All right, as we talked about, I think we're going to skip over to the timer. As we talked about, it's a very, very light crowd this evening, so we're going to give you a little opportunity. If you need to go a little longer, we'll just start this for 2 minutes, but we'll be happy to get you up again if necessary. And I'm just going to start with our first speaker, and I can see a couple of people writing, so when you're ready, just put your hand up. And in the meantime, John Ullum, and he wanted to make a oral comment. So John?
Where do you want to stand?
Well, just right here, because I believe they've got the microphone. If you want to stand and use that, that's just going right into the recorder, however you want to do it.
So you can go to that. John Old, Matt Mouvet. There's been some speculation on the part of some city councilors about the possibility of the Main Street Bridge collapsing. This came up at the last meeting. So that's one thing I'd like to talk about. Just how likely is it that we'd have a collapse, and if there isn't some things we should be doing to mitigate damage to the bridge. For example, there's the 294 that crosses the bridge about 4,000 times per year. And they just rerouted that bus. Weighs about 30 to 50,000 pounds, depending on how many people are in there, which bus it happens to be. There is no speed limit. Try to slow down the heavy traffic there. We could route the heavy traffic off of that bridge. That's one option. The other thing I'd like to talk about is bicycle lanes. I don't know if you've noticed, but once you ride off Main Street Bridge, there's never going to be a bicycle lane going south on Main Street. And the only safe place for a bicycle to ride on Main Street is out in the middle of the street. So what you're going to have doing is, when you talk of bicycle lanes, you're talking about a 100-foot span. Give a 100-foot long lane. And the city council in the past has expressed the desire not to widen the bridge at all, or to just barely widen it. They want to keep it consistent with the street that it's going to blow into. So how wide are bicycle lanes, and how wide would the bridge have to be to actually accommodate bicycle lanes? Or is talk of bicycle lanes just not going to happen? Thank you.
Thank you, John. So I hear 3 different topics, and I don't yet have another card, so maybe we can get some answers, John, what we can answer tonight. One, there's the issue of collapse in general. Then I heard the second question being the bus, the potential for a heavy bus that uses the bridge. How does that impact this potential for collapse? And then the third question is about bike lanes and if they can be accommodated if the bridge is in fact, made wider. So Ramsey or John, is there anything we can share tonight about that?
Bike lane, at a minimum, we're looking at 11-foot lanes for the travel way. And bike lanes, typically what FHWA looks at is 6 foot for shoulder, and that's a combined shoulder / bike lane. And there might be an opportunity to reduce that to maybe 4 or 5 feet. So you're looking at anywhere, again, we have to run this by FHWA and others, but about 30 to a little bit more than 30 feet wide for the travel way. Then you have the sidewalks that need to go in. And the sidewalks would be typically 6 feet wide, 5 to 6 feet wide. So if you add that to the bridge, and they could be separated with a barrier. So again, you're looking at about 42 feet maybe of a wide bridge. But again, that includes the sidewalks.
So anybody want to speak to the collapse issue or the bus load issue?
The inspection reports going back to 41 have shown that this bridge has issues, and I think it's common knowledge based on the inspection reports going back. The first evidence was a collapse of the wing wall in the early 40s, and that's documented in one of the inspection reports, and the cracking and displacements. The structural integrity is Caltrans is rating this as deficient. And it's hard to tell when and how or how this would behave in a large earthquake. But the weak point are the spandrel walls that are holding up the earth fill. And if there would be a seismic event, we would think that that's the weakest point, and there would be a potential for those walls to fail, meaning they might displace and the roadway might lose the roadway and the sidewalks. Regarding the bus, did you say that the bus, who was the gentleman who had the comment, sorry?
The gentleman behind the camera.
Did they change the route, or?
Yeah, what they did was they used to come all the way down Kelly, all the way down Main Street and cross the Main Street Bridge. But they just recently changed the route, so it comes up Kelly and takes a left and still crosses the Main Street Bridge. So the CitizenAccess was out here asking for input. Apparently no one spoke with them from the city about any danger. I had spoken with them about it, and they said they were unaware of anything, but they were sure that they would be told if there was a danger crossing that bridge. And so even no matter what the situation is, you're worried about wear and tear on the bridge. Would it not make sense to route heavy traffic off it, or at least put a sign up saying 5-mile-an-hour speed limit for heavy traffic? I've ridden on the CitizenAccess. They'll cross that bridge at 25 miles an hour, and so I would hate to think that they were coming into town doing that if the bridge was straightened out. But when they leave, they're doing 25 miles an hour when they cross that bridge. So I'm understanding, there's been a lot of talk about this collapse, but nothing's been done to mitigate the risk. So I'm wondering how seriously we should take this talk of collapse.
Again, the bridge is it's deficient structurally, and something needs to be done to the bridge.
Or should we route traffic? Is it safe to let those buses cross the traffic? There's old people, little kids ride that bus every day, 12 times on weekdays, 8 times on weekends, or 16 times on the weekends. It's 4,000 trips a year, and we're only talking about 2 or 3 years, so we're looking at 8,000 to 12,000 trips across that bridge, full of vulnerable people with us, and there's no effort to even slow the bus down. And so if it is pounding on the bridge, which I would expect, why isn't anything be done, or should we do something to mitigate it?
Okay, I don't think that's something we're gonna solve tonight, so that's a good
We'll look into
comment.
it,
You can look into that.
We'll look into that.
So John, did you want to add to that?
Yeah.
I think you're flagging an important subject.
Yeah, I can say, I've been working on a lot of bridge projects, and I'm not an engineer. So, but just from experience, what happens is as you go forward, as conditions continue to deteriorate for whatever reason, I mean, there's a lot of different types of bridges. Typically, it gets to a point where Caltrans and the inspections will start ramping up their concerns, and they'll be providing information to the local agency that you need to restrict weights on the bridge or speeds, or I've seen it where notices have gone out that this is getting to the point where there's a real danger and you should consider taking the following steps. So that is something that goes on as part of the process. So I'm talking generically. The other thing thank you for the comment on bikes. We've been looking into the options, and that's something we're going to be looking at, how to address bikes. And as Ramsey said, there's different ways. There's Main Street, if you look in Half Moon Bay's general plan, is designated as a bicycle route. Not bike lanes, but a bicycle route. Typically that means signage is provided, the lanes have to be a certain width to facilitate and accommodate bikes, but they're not painted bike lanes per se. So that is something that we're going to have to look at. And obviously, as you pointed out, to accommodate on the bridge and then right upstream of the bridge and downstream, if it's bad for bikes, that would be a logical question. Why do we need to do something on the bridge? So what I'm trying to say in a long way is that is something that we're working on, and we're going to look into all of those issues. So appreciate the comment.
Thank you, sir.
One other thing I'd like to say is that there is a weight limitation posting, as I recall, ahead of the bridge that was placed a few years ago. And I believe it's still out there.
Okay. All right, David DeGogli is the next speaker, and then the speaker following David will be Charlie Hall, and I do have one additional speaker so far. So if you're still planning to speak, I'll be happy to get your card. So David, do you want to come down so we can see you?
Can I just get it back to I want to give it to you after because I have my comments.
Oh, sure. What's your name now?
Simon, Jerry Simon.
Jerry? Okay, great. I'll call you up. Okay, David, you got a couple minutes.
Thank God. First of all, Mr. Hessler, I owe you an apology. I sent you a communication a couple days ago. I forgot about your honorable nature. I don't want to apologize for that in public. I did wrong. Mr. Hisson, if I heard you correctly, you just said that the bridge is posted. Limits are posted.
There is a sign out there, so that's the last time I looked at it.
Okay, perfect. And Mr. Hessler, if I heard you correctly, you said basically Caltrans will let us know if the bridge starts getting to the point where it needs to be posted or other stuff. I'm paraphrasing. Plus or minus.
It's my assumption based on what I've seen in other projects is that they typically work with, that's part of their job, right? Under Ramsey said under state law.
Sure.
Inspect, and they keep everybody kind of in the loop.
Okay, so I'm in complete sync with you. July 2013 bridge inspection report, the same reports you're using to justify your concerns about safety and your concerns about everything else. Eric Halstead, engineer, quote, "This bridge is legal for all legal loads." The bridge is posted, presumably by the city. Caltrans directs the city to take the postings down.
When?
Okay?
Okay, so that's on the record. They'll be certainly researching that.
There's nothing to research. It's on the BIR that they're quoting.
Okay.
So we just listened to 20 minutes of description saying how the bridge is going to fall down, the bridge is structurally compromised. Caltrans would let us know. Caltrans not only let us know, they specifically said it shouldn't be posted.
Okay.
I'll let others go for the time being. I have some other stuff later.
Okay, you want to come back?
That would be great. Thank you.
Okay, all righty. Charlie, you're next, and Charlie will be followed by Mark Heat.
Does it matter where I speak?
Wherever, just as long as you're loud, we can get you on the.
That's fine, I think you can hear me.
Yep,
I don't
just
have
get
a
a strong
problem with
voice like I do.
Again, my name is Charlie Hall, I'm the finance officer at American Legion Post, which we're coming up on our 80th year of existence here in Half Moon Bay on April 24th. So we have a commitment to the city of Half Moon Bay. However, I do not live in the city of Half Moon Bay, I live in El Granada. Now, for those of you not familiar with the coast, if you go down Highway 1 to Princeton, on the left-hand side, from Miramar on is Half Moon Bay. On the right-hand side is El Granada, which is where I live. I live right across from my post, I could walk to it. But it's a Half Moon Bay address, and I live in El Granada. So anyway, long story short, I'm in favor of saving history along with the city of this bridge and maintaining it in a safe manner. It impacts all of us on the coast. Now, people don't realize that whatever Half Moon Bay does affects everybody up the coast. And talking about bike lanes you mentioned a minute ago, I go up to Pacifica all the time, up Old Wednesdays in Pacifica. Take a look at the bike lanes along Highway 1. There's no way that they should be allowing bikes with a bike lane like that. And it happens every day. I drive that coastal road once a week minimum. And it's dangerous for the bikers, it's dangerous for the people that are driving. So bike lanes are not uniformly adhered to in this state. Okay? That's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Mark? Great, and Mark will be followed by Jerry.
So I was just curious where we are in the testing of the bridge. How have we progressed in that? Is that coming along?
We've talked about several plans, but we have not implemented any testing yet.
Okay. I would suggest that we get busy on that. Like, let's diagnose the problem. A lot of visual inspection tells us we need to do something, but I'd like to see some further tests done. The other thing, I have a hard time buying the concern, the deep felt concern the city has for the safety of our public. If they really felt that the bridge was compromised, they should have shut down heavy traffic, heavy loads on that bridge a long time ago. Nothing's been done to really route traffic away from that bridge. And I should be speaking to the city council, not to you folks, but I just, I hear this outpouring of concern from the city about the safety, that people are going to die if that bridge collapses, and they've never done anything to really even maintain the bridge. There's been a real neglect on maintaining the bridge and a neglect on trying to route traffic from heavy loads. If they felt that there was a serious concern and nothing's been done, I have a hard time buying that story that the city's concerned about the safety of our public. I'm sorry, it really. One last thing. If for some reason this thing actually gets done and this thing gets widened out, I've got a business right on that first block, and I'm a chiropractor. People need to get to my office. They can't walk long distances to get there. I've heard rumors that the parking on Main Street will all go away in that first block. The parking's gone. It'll be a 2-lane coming off of the bridge going. I'm hoping that those are rumors, that those are not true, because that would truly devastate my business if people can't park by where they need to come in and see me. Is there any truth to the fact that the parking spaces will be eliminated in that first block?
We haven't done the detailed analysis yet for the plans for the staging, but we envision a few of the diagonal parking spaces would need to be taken. How many and exactly what durations, we don't know yet. But we're envisioning a few of those spaces, they need to be taken, yes.
And would that be just for construction or permanently?
Just for construction.
Okay, let's make that clear.
And we're looking at other ways to provide additional parking space. There are some other opportunities, but There are a few spaces that would potentially be lost during construction, that's correct.
During construction, but the general plan at its grandest, let's say, doesn't wipe out the first block of parking. Because that's what I'm hearing. I'm hearing from a couple of people, and again, I don't.
As a final product, we're looking at perhaps adding a few spaces.
Okay.
So I haven't seen anything that you would eliminate any of the existing. On the contrary, one of the alternatives adds, I think, 3 or 4 spaces.
Yeah. Have there been any deaths on that bridge from collisions, or any bicyclists that have been killed on that bridge, or do you know what the accident report over the last 50 years is on that bridge?
I'm not aware of any accidents. I don't know.
Because I know that was a concern that one of our council members brought, that really sharp turn was very dangerous. And that heaven forbid, we've got to straighten that thing out. And I'm telling you, that's a bunch of crock. Because I've lived here for almost 30 years. I don't know if I've ever even heard of, I mean, there's fender benders, but that little bend in the curb is a beautiful way to slow people down coming into Half Moon Bay. You straighten up that bridge, like that's the big push, be nice straight shot right into Main Street. Again, I see that as a potential problem in terms of speeding things up. And anyway, thanks.
No, thank you.
Yeah.
So I think you had 3 questions. One was testing done, not yet. Number 2 about the parking places only being potentially taken away in construction. And the 3rd one about an accident report, which they can't answer right at the moment.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, Jerry, you're up. And then, David, I don't have any more speakers. Does anybody want to speak before we let David go again? Oh, good. We've got a couple, 3 more. And then we'll get you still up there. But it's good to get the folks who haven't had a chance. Okay. Anybody else have one they want to hand me? I'm sorry, Jerry. Let me do a little housekeeping here. Thank you for being here. Oh, I can hand this back to you if you come up and you just say. Okay. All right, Jerry, you're on.
Okay, to your name again? Ramsey. I'm a civil engineer, licensed civil engineer. I've been with John Bloom Associates, which was absorbed by yours, so you may as well know that. Part of my education was also financed by working for the highway department in their program. The first question I had was on the seismic comments. I've been involved with buildings design of seismic. What, is there a fault line in Half Moon Bay?
No, there's a close fault line, but if an earthquake happens, you still feel it over here. You can have the effects of it.
Yeah, but in 1989, when the Loma earthquake, was there any damage to the bridge? I mean, my real question is, why hasn't the bridge been instrumented? Why has even the strength of the concrete? You wouldn't even have to do really basic testing. Couldn't you just use a Schmidt hammer to find out what the strength is? I mean, why hasn't that been done? I just don't understand.
Have you read the inspection reports?
Yes, but no one has done that and found out what the strength. I mean, the reason I bring it up is that the last council meeting, one of the council members said, the cement, she meant concrete, in those days, 100 years ago, who knows what it was? What kind of how could you let that pass without saying, hey, let's test what the strength of the concrete? Also, for the seismic design, I'd love to see what the criteria you're going to use. I mean, is it lateral motion or is it vertical motion? What is going to be the design criteria? One of the comments that was made this was about EIR. I've been involved with an EIR that was a draft EIR on the street and transportation, and a lot of comments were made, and then your response was that after the comments were made that you folks would do a good faith response. The good faith response turned out to be like one word, okay. So I'm real hesitant when you say to me that that's going to really mean anything. There's a real question there in my mind. The geometry of the roadway, I think the person who just spoke before, when I talked about it being a straight shot, absolutely. What you probably end up doing is putting a speed bump in. It's like comical. I mean, that really does slow the traffic down. I know there's one council member that was concerned because he happened to hit the curb. I've been here 17 years. I've driven over that bridge many times. That's a non-starter. I think that's. not right to even work on that.
And Jerry, how many more points do you have? Because I've got 5 speakers, and if you need time to go again, I'm happy to give you more time. Well, no, we'll get him up again. And I need your thing if you're actually done, or I'll just write down and get you back up. Okay, I'll bring you back up. Okay, the next person is George. Mutlap? That's you.
Can I sit here for a moment?
Absolutely, you're close enough.
I'm shy, I don't want to give up.
Alrighty. And we'll
I
bring
just kind of want to tack on a couple of
Jerry
points.
back
I really wasn't planning on speaking today, but more listening and trying to absorb and learn as much as I can. But we've touched a nerve here, multiple nerves.
Okay.
I'll start with this simple one, and I will pile on to what has already been said.
Guys, excuse me.
That would be the bend in the bridge. The bend in the bridge, I was at the very first meeting by consultants that were demonstrating how wonderful it is to have a straight shot. I guess that's a matter of perspective. I don't do it that way. This bridge, despite the fact that a council member hit it, he's not the only one. I know somebody else that hit it, but they fixed it. But since 1900, I don't see any justification. I've been unable to find any justification to challenge the geometry. When you say you can't look down Main Street, wonderful. Why would you have people coming from 92 over the bridge and having a straight shot and wanting to enter town at 30 miles an hour or 35 or 40 miles an hour or more? And it would happen if that were straightened out. That is a natural calming event for traffic. And when they get to the other side, you can make the bridge as wide as they want. Main Street is still Main Street. It still is what it is. So it'd be rather like 92, which is the road that most of you, probably all of you, I think all of you probably came that way. You'll notice when you go over the hill that there are spots where there are only two, one east and one west. And there are spots where it opens up, particularly when you're driving east, where it opens into 2 lanes. But in the end, it all comes back to 1 lane. It's a skyline, and when you get down to the other side of the hill, you still have the 1 lane when you cross the springs. So these are things that we can make a big fuss about a lot of things, but in the end, we have to look at some of the realities. And the reality is, we don't want traffic coming across that bridge any faster than 25. In fact, I wouldn't mind seeing them come slower. The slower they come, the more they may see that they want to stop and look at, or purchase, or participate in, and enjoy the charms of our downtown. On an issue that is at least of equal importance, there has been much discussion of safety. In fact, there's a guy in the room that created a video from one council meeting regarding safety, and it was comical, and just comical, in fact. I mean, it was just fun, because every council member was just yammering about safety. Yet every one of them has admitted that the bridge is safe. We had one of the consultants come in to challenge the other 2, just really looking over the book, and said, I don't see a safety issue in my opinion, and I can fix that bridge without replacing for under $2 million. I would ask this body, and I would ask them to seriously consider it and give us the data that we need. There has been no testing on the bridge. All the reports that we've looked at, that I've seen, and I think I've seen pretty much all of them, if not all of them, multiple times, demonstrate a visual inspection. What I'd like to see is a structural examination of that bridge. If in fact it is not safe, close the darn thing down and let's get busy with a new bridge. I have no problem with that. And every merchant, to a person, when I've talked to them about this and said, well, the city's saying, what if it's not safe and they have to close it down? To a person, every one of them, immediately, without breath, without blink, has responded the same way. Close it down. They're putting the city and the safety before their own business and before themselves, rightfully so, which gives you some idea of the character of the downtown merchants here. I agree with that. But how can we make conclusions when we don't have the facts? So when I hear something about, span of the walls are going to collapse in an earthquake, we've been through 2 very, very serious earthquakes. The bridge is not the prettiest, but it never was. But it's lasted. We drive over it every day. It's not a problem. Show me it is a problem, and let's talk differently about it. Let's put that option on the table. Let's get the data and the information first, before we make assumptions and form conclusions.
Thank you, George. Okay, the next one is it Giles Sofer? Thank you. And followed by Luciano Arunda. I need it.
Well, let me make a compliment, because I want to go in I don't want to bore you with twice.
Well, I got it on tape.
That's Jules Sofer, and my questions are really directed at this gentleman who's the engineer.
Okay.
Because his comments when he was giving his spiel were general, relatively not specific. I know engineers, if they have a specific fact, they'll usually give it. Now, we're $500,000 down the road, and over a year. And I'm wondering what that $500,000 has bought us if you don't have any specifics, and you only have these generalities that you can give us. That's my comment. Thank you.
Jules is followed by Luciano. Luciano, you're on. And after Luciano, we'll take, is it Theron?
So what I have is just like an image file on this, that if you can show me that, that's my comment.
How do you, I don't know whose computer that is. Is that okay, putting somebody's file on there? Okay.
And then it's an image file,
So if you would remember that we're taping this with just a thing, so explain something, because the folks that are taping this are not the project team that are doing the videotape. We have just an audio tape. So if you say things by just pointing to something that we can't see on that, that would be
One further
get a little
thing.
more of a.
Can I say, seeing how I didn't use my whole 2 minutes, that I didn't use my whole 2 minutes, so one last point.
Sure, absolutely.
For
Well,
the
they're getting
machine, for the machine, not for the humans. I did not get a response from the engineer to where is my $500,000? Thank you.
Plug it in again, Luciano. Pull it up, plug it in again.
And Luciano, if it's appropriate, I don't know if you feel comfortable leaving a copy for the team to look at on the computer. We could take a copy of it to include it when you're ready.
So you just right click and open our browser.
There you
So
go.
this is a drawing that shows the lighting.
Can you be a little louder?
Sure. So this is a drawing that the city used to show what the bridge now look like, and I just wanted to put a bicycle in there and show how the bicycle. So that's pretty much. Maybe take my whole minutes watching it. So that's what shows in the paper, right? As the approved, this is the design.
So I think you're suggesting that perhaps that could be looked at, and perhaps, do you like the idea of a bike lane somewhere on it, or just not at all?
I don't think it's applicable. Look at this.
Okay.
In that time, there's no bikers there. There's parking spaces everywhere.
All right,
Okay.
thank you, thank you. All right, Ron, you're on. Anybody else, before we go back to the couple speakers that wanted to have the additional time? Anybody new speakers that wanted to speak? Okay, Ron, you're on.
Okay, I'm Theron Cambridge. I've been living here since '87. I actually only had a question until I heard other people. Now I have a point, I guess you could say. What dominated, so far as dominated the meeting is a reasonable doubt. There's a lot of reasonable doubt going on. People are saying, well, it's so dangerous. Why are people driving big buses over it? And if there are a lot of big buses driving over it, and there's been this rolling thunder of watch out, you're going to die, kind of, not that bad, but it's dire. On the one hand, it's dire. On the other hand, it's being practically used. So because those two things don't line up, it is reasonable for everybody to doubt that anything has to be done quickly, and whatever has to be done has to be questioned. And what feeds that also is the seismic activity, the idea of, obviously when it was 1900s, brand new. You have 1906, brand new. It's not going to, but we've had the 1989 Loma Prieta, and when that thing happened, there was a lot of retrofitting taking place all across the Bay Area. Santa Cruz took a big hit, San Francisco. And if that was so, and retrofitting was required for certain kinds of structures, the first question I think of is, was any retrofitting done on the bridge? And if not, why not? And if it wasn't done, it just adds to this doubt story. There's a doubt, a lot of doubt of how serious is this. So I don't really know what 24 is versus 100. Or if 24 is truly accurate on this scale of 1 to 100. Is it really 68, but we're calling it 24? I need to know what that means and where those numbers come from. So that's what came out of this meeting. Now my question really relates to whatever has to be done. I have to believe that this bridge is not unique in the world, certainly not in Europe, not in the United States, not in North America. And it makes me wonder if there's dozens of precedents that have been set already on in this kind of bridge that fits this criteria. I'd like to see what has been done in the past to save historical bridges in the United States or Canada or Mexico or England. Because again, this bridge was built in 1900, but there's been centuries worth of bridges built that have been saved or demolished because they just couldn't be saved. So I'd like to know if there's at least 6 or 10 well-done alternatives to what we're dealing with to remediate a potential problem bridge and save it in the context that most people are talking about. So I'd love to see that from someone. That's it.
Thank you. Maybe we can get you an answer tonight to a couple of these. Rancy, do we know if there was any retrofit done after the 1989 earthquake?
I'm not aware of any that has been done.
Okay, so that's something that's maybe answering the why not might be something we can look into and address. And then maybe I'm hearing a desire to have, however you write up the information really explaining that scale, because there is a lot of confusion about what do the numbers mean and what does this number mean relative to other numbers. So I think that's a good point that we probably don't have a firm answer to tonight, but could be added in. And then any precedent elsewhere, and I'm looking at you, Mike, as maybe somebody who can address a little bit of that for Ron tonight.
Yeah, there are obviously a variety of solutions to various bridge projects. Part of it goes to what the state of the bridge is through analysis, and there's different methodologies to try to find alternatives. There are other successful bridge rehabilitation projects out there to look at, and that's all part of this process, looking for what works for this as a rehabilitation concept, what works for this particular bridge. So
that was my point, is if you could distribute that kind of information to a broad group of people, they can say, I see these 10 and I can see the possible here, I like that one. And you can give a real example so that people can embrace it or reject it based on.
That sounds like some really good information and maybe something to consider for the meeting that's more of a design meeting in the late spring that John referenced up here, that maybe we can get that information out in the next couple of months, do that work and bring that in. So that seems like a great suggestion for doing some of that for the late spring meeting this year. So you don't have to wait till next summer when the draft environmental comes out. Okay, Victoria Woodrow, I believe is that correct, Victoria?
Yes.
Yes, good.
Yeah, I'd just like to say that since the beginning of this meeting, I find it suspicious and offensive that the tone seems to be that the bridge is a done deal. Oh, and also I'm in total agreement with most of what everybody has said here about all of the concerns.
Okay, since we don't have a question there, I'm going to take that one as a comment and certainly noted. Anybody else who wants to speak for the first time before we go back to David and Jerry? David, you're on.
Thank you. I just have one observation and 2 points I'd like to make. I'm going one.
And if you can speak up a little bit, you have a tendency to make sure we get all the words in the microphone.
The first observation I'd like to make is, have any of you guys been down on the bridge recently? I mean, this isn't a trick question, I just did. It's a beautiful place to take your wife, your kids, your dog, you name it. The reason I'm bringing that up is because it looks to me, going down there pretty frequently, that the bridge has been cored. Okay, there's a bunch of holes that weren't there before. And I have to wonder how or who or why it would have been cored. Interesting thought. I would argue that someone may already be testing the bridge though, which would be kind of cool. You have over on your board there, Main Street Bridge Efficiency Rating, 24, has to get to an 80, minimum required SR by Federal Highway Administration to be eligible for funding. Yes?
This is a good question.
So I have two things to address that, to that idea. One is a letter from Sylvia Phone in early January, which you guys have a copy of. You know what's coming, I think. This was a letter that was sent to me by the director, or the person who's heading Caltrans Local Assistance. You guys all know who she is. It was in response to a query about what's known as an ESHO exception for Federal Highway Administration funds. This exception is applicable specifically to covered bridges, to historic bridges, and so on. I'd like to read the relevant portions of that email, and if anyone wants it afterwards, I can forward it to you. Dear Mr. Blovey, the Highway Bridge Program guidelines require that major rehabilitation projects, including bridge replacement in lieu of rehabilitation, bring the bridge up to current standards and achieve an SR over 80. Okay, so far, we're good. But there is an exception process if the city so chooses to proceed. The city would write a letter to Caltrans and provide supporting documentation, including but not limited to design exceptions approved by the city, traffic accident data and analysis, feasibility, and other technical studies as needed. Caltrans would then review, and I'm going to summarize from here, they would review and they would make a recommendation to FHWA as to whether to proceed or not. It's no secret, the city hasn't even begun to pursue that. They've never spoken to Caltrans about it. They've never submitted an application. They've never looked at it once. The second part of this is I've had an ongoing dialogue with Caltrans, and I know these guys are also aware of this. In early December, Lenny Roberts and I met with Caltrans and presented them with an argument regarding the sufficiency rating of the bridge. Certain people in this room have had a lot of fun with that recently. This is excerpted from a letter that I received from Chen Wu last week. And for the people behind me who don't know what this is about, the sufficiency rating, my letter posited two things. Our communication in early December and then following up in January posited two things. The first thing was the sufficiency rating of the bridge isn't the 24 as it says. The second thing was the requirement that they're stating there that you get above an 80 could be met by an in situ rehabilitation of the bridge. Leave it alone and it would get above an 80. My posit was 82. I've gone back and forth with Caltrans several times on this. We're to a 72 and they've requested a design process so they can evaluate if we actually can get to 82. Even if we got to 72, as far as I'm concerned, we're there. But they want it above 80, so we'll get it above 80 if it can legally be done. So I'm just going to excerpt this email very quickly. Sorry, I'm so blind. In summary, we must have the detailed information on how the bridge is to be rehabilitated to substantiate the ratings of various items that you assign in your letter. We ask that you substantiate how you arrived at these two specific values, i.e. how the bridge is to be rehabilitated. Okay? Caltrans is asking me for design drawings or a proposal of how to rehabilitate our bridge. Frankly, that's pathetic. Thank you.
I don't think there was any question in there that is answerable this evening, so thank you, David. Lenny? Jerry, you're on. Any more speakers who would like to speak? Anybody who thinks they need more time after Jerry's complete? Okay.
I think most of the points have been covered, but for the folks at URS, whenever there's an earthquake, John Bloom, which is part of now URS, people would go out and look at the various structures to see what happened. We realized that the beam to column for steel structures was an issue because there was cracking. We realized that concrete columns designed as square columns with vertical bars and ties at 16 inches apart because there were big bars failed. And that's why columns now are being built that are round and have spiral reinforcement. What I'm really trying to get at is that there hasn't been any inspection of this bridge, but visual. I mean, it's almost, it's comical. Why, and that part of the question is, what was the $500,000? What did it do? I mean, you can't just visually inspect something. And to the point of one of the walls coming out, wasn't there a deal where they actually built a beam across so the wall wouldn't come out? I mean, there's all kinds of ideas here. And then on the bicycles, if this is a 80-foot bridge, if you're coming from Santa Cruz, there are bridges that are so narrow that when I go back and forth, there's no bike lane. I have to stop and let the bikes go. What are we worried about an 80-foot bridge that, I mean, it just, is there any realism? I mean,
Okay, Jerry, you had a couple questions. One is there was a question about a beam. So, and if I could have your card so that I can make sure we have a full copy. Betsy, can you answer that?
That was really,
The beam?
that was to indicate that someone should have inspected the bridge after the earthquake and come up with some facts. I mean, why wasn't it instrumented? I mean, it doesn't cost that much to instrument the bridge. What are you talking about here? I mean, this is common. I mean, when the attorney said in the meeting that, yeah, the engineer did a visual inspection, right? I mean, $500,000 for visual inspection.
Anybody else like to speak?
Just one.
Yes.
Just another suggestion
Yep.
for mitigating
John?
bicycle danger for bicyclists. Has anybody considered just like posting a share the road bicycle, or share the road bicycle sign? Maybe possibly just prohibiting the passing of bicycles on the Main Street Bridge? Because like I ride, and Mr. Alfano, he describes exactly how you cross the Main Street Bridge. You stand up on your pedals and you get your butt across it. Now, either you can do that or you can't. If you're a little kid, you can't. But no little kids could go cruising down the middle of Main Street once it gets to the other side of the bridge. So really, just talk of bicycle lanes and stuff like that. Honestly, this is like propaganda. This is something that they want you to say so that they have this sort of talking point that says we're going to put in bicycle lanes, we're worried about the bicyclists. It's just, it's an example of why this room is full of skeptical people. We know that you guys are smart enough to make good decisions. We have not heard the city council ask any good questions. And so we feel like we have to do that. So that's where we're all here, and why we're really skeptical of anything that comes from our city council. Thank you.
Good, thank you. And I think the question or the recommendation is looking at potentially a share the road sign and a prohibit bikes and all of that. So that's certainly.
For passing of bicycles.
For passing of bicycles, yes, exactly. So with that, I'm going to ask if Matt would put back up okay, I need a card.
This is a procedural question, not
okay,
a
sure.
pro con anything. I actually came to today's meeting because I thought there were going to be three options shown to the group. One, to leave the bridge alone, which we all know that's not going to happen. Two, to replace it. And three, to rehab it. And I've seen previous options fairly carefully described, and that's what I came to see, is which of the 5 proposals from before are still on the table.
Okay, I do need you to fill out a card. We'll get John to answer that question, but I am going to ask you to fill out a card because that really is a scoping comment. And so we do need you to actually fill that out just for our records, if you would, so we can sync that up and make sure that we get that fed in. And John, I think maybe you did speak to that a bit, but maybe you could elaborate a little bit more.
I'm not sure if you heard at the beginning, but you're absolutely right. There were some earlier drawings, but we purposely did not bring those tonight because there's been so much input that has happened in the last months since those were developed. And we've heard a lot, I mean, to put it mildly, about what people are interested in. So the purpose of coming here tonight was to come here with kind of a clean slate, an open mind. We're going to go back and take all these, as we said, later on this spring. We're going to come back out with some ideas. And we have retained another expert on the team that is specifically has expertise for projects like this. I'd also like to add, not everybody is aware, there's some people in the room are, but Caltrans has agreed to consult with a group out of Texas. They specialize in working with bridges across the United States that are historic and providing input to bridge engineers and highway departments that are really aimed to make sure that all alternatives are looked at carefully, so that somebody just doesn't make a statement, well, we got to get rid of this bridge, that's it. Their whole expertise, they have a whole team, are really to come alongside of the designers and provide input, and that is something that is required under the law. So I saw an email a couple of days ago from Caltrans committing to this group to that process. So I just wanted you all to know, besides this community, there is another whole group that specializes in that. And I also wanted to mention that one of the gentlemen said we didn't answer every question. You're right. We're answering the easy ones tonight. Some of the ones you guys posed to us and some of the feedback, it's going to require more in-depth. So, for example, you heard loud and clear the basis for the whole project is questionable in many people's minds. So what I take away from that is we need to do a better job about communicating in plain English what does a 24 mean? You know, give you guys context. Is a 24, like, how about thousands of other bridges? Is that bad or good? Does it mean it's going to fall? We need to do a better job about explaining that. We have also asked Caltrans to independently look at the 24 and to verify that that number is accurate. I know David has asked that as well, and I know Caltrans is working on that, so we're asking them to take a second look at it. The testing has not been started yet, but that's something that's planned to be done. I mean, that's another thing everybody's, we've heard loud and clear.
Real quick, and I'm very sorry, could we then just put all this on hold for that until that's done? Since they're doing it, we've been asking them to do it, we've been paying them to do it.
Who's doing it?
Everything is based on
actual structural testing?
It hasn't started yet. That is the next step. I'm not sure who will be doing it, whether it'll be, I'm not a structural engineer, so you're hearing me hesitate because I don't have those details other than to say the testing will be done. And I would say that.
How comprehensive is that structural test you're talking about? Do you know?
I don't know that answer yet.
I just want to carefully get into a little dialogue here about back and forth. But again, just Rob Kalkbrenner, the project manager on the team, there will be testing done. Obviously, if you're going to rehab it and widen it, you got to know what you're attaching to, right? All right. So there's got to be testing done. That'll be a variety of things. I don't know what that testing protocol is going to be yet, but it'll have to be something significant enough to take on a rehab. That's fair.
And it would come out of the project team budget versus somebody else in Caltrans would be
I guess for clarification here, John just said, more or less unequivocally, and I may have misheard this, but he said that Caltrans was going to revisit the SR or reevaluate the SR. We've got the tape, we can play it back if we need to, but basically that's what John just said. Is that what they're doing? It's a simple yes or no.
Yes.
Okay.
They are.
So that's not testing for purposes of anything else we're talking about here. That's the purpose that they're doing that test solely because they have been shown that there may be an issue with the sufficiency rating, and they are not going to approve our project until they know what the current sufficiency rating is.
Okay, and can I get your name, sir?
David Crescent.
David Crescent. Okay, you're the one who has the floor, so I'm going to make sure you get the rest of your comment, and then I need your paper. And the gentleman in the green, I'm going to need a paper from you if you'd like to speak. You can ask your question, but I definitely need a paper. so we can keep it. So did you want to follow up with your question and then give me the
I'll
paper?
even make it official since I.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That's why we're here, because we're at a scoping meeting and there are protocols.
Thank heavens for that.
Yep.
I heard you say you do have these ideas about the 3 possible proposals, but you didn't want to bring them tonight. So that's what you said. I don't know that you meant it. But if you don't want to bring them tonight, can I go over to your office and get them tomorrow?
No, what I said, and let me say it again, is you all previously saw some drawings from the workshops last year. Those are the ones that were not brought tonight.
But just give me a number of the ones that are still on the table, or more specifically, is the Big Scardoza Associates option 5, the one that's the basis for the rehab?
I don't think we have made that decision.
All of the alternatives for rehab and widening are still on the table, including big sclerosers.
How about
Did you say
5A,
that,
just
Robert?
for the fun of it?
I don't recall exactly what 5A is.
No, you should read it. That was the one the community submitted. And was.
5A, that was from Mr.
Crescent.
Right here in the blue shirt. Thank you. Okay, yes, sir, in green.
My name is Drew Warner. There's been a lot of requests made for further studies and more groups to evaluate this situation. Who's going to pay for that?
Rob?
Any money that's spent on the bridge will need to come out of the bridge's budget.
So the city's going to pay for it, right?
Well, there's a proportion of it, as you may be aware, that there's a grant, federal highway money, variety of funding sources, and the city picks up a portion of that.
And if if it's determined that the federal monies don't apply, then we'll pay.
I'd have to know what the circumstances specific are where the city takes a risk. But I'm not going to get into a dialogue about the different finance options on the table.
I'm not saying that's going to happen. I'm just asking if it did happen, who would pay?
Okay, John, are you going to go round for round 3? Okay, let's go.
Just a real quick question.
Sure.
You mentioned that the no project option is on the table. I don't see how we can talk about that even in 1 second without having the bridge tested first. Right? And so I don't see, so there must be some kind of like timing that you guys had in mind for this test.
Sure, John.
The bridge
I'm sorry,
will
Rob will
be,
clarify.
the bridge will be tested.
I understand that. but
He's concerned about continuing our process without that as a foundation piece of data.
And it's hard for anybody to recommend that, because personally, that's my option. Don't do anything. You know, just patch the crack that Caltrans was patched back in 1999. Put up some mitigating signs, pass a few ordinances. Wait till the big one comes. But when it does, we'll get federal funding, don't rebuild our bridge. But yeah, I'd just like to know how we can make any kind of like, how we can advocate for such a plan if we haven't done any kind of testing.
Okay, good point. Charlie?
George, you can call whatever you want, I don't care. As long as you get my comments. I am appreciating some of the comments and the feedback that we're getting, and I certainly appreciate your candor. You're in a tough spot. All of you are. All of us are too. This is a very serious issue that, in my opinion, will change, if this new bridge comes, will change Half Moon Bay forever, and will close up Main Street, not to mention the other inconveniences. These are very, very serious issues that this town is facing, that the merchants are facing, that the residents are facing, that the visitors are facing, that our income is facing, and our future is facing. My wife walked across that bridge as a little girl. Her father before her walked across that bridge as a little boy. His father before him walked across that bridge. Unfortunately, it wasn't built until he was already bigger than a little boy. And I can go back further if I like. So you need to get some sense of really, I don't mean this, it's going to sound arrogant, and it's not meant to be, but some sense of really who and what you're dealing with here. There are numerous families that have had property in this town for well over 100 years. You don't hear their names. They don't step forward. They don't make a fuss. But they do it because they love this place. They have loved this place, and they have no intention of selling. These are very important factors when you're going forward. This is not something where this job is going to get done, and you've got to split town, and then you've got to be stuck with. I'm telling you, that's the approach that is taken. That's the wrong approach, and I really appreciate your candor and honesty, at least with my comments. Thank you very much.
All right, I think we're done. I know that Rob wanted to do some closing comments. Before we do those, I'd like to go back to the slide, just the one before this, oops, the one before that. The one that has the how to put your comments in again, just to remind you all, you've been terrific. Jim, you owe me a piece of paper. And I just want to remind everybody that we're doing this again on Saturday morning, and I really thought that the final comment about hearing and making sure that those families do come on Saturday and are represented just like you've represented yourselves this evening, because this is an opportunity to get these comments in, to get access to these experts, and have Rob listen and others listen to your input. And we appreciate you spending your evening with us. So thank you very much for that. And Rob, you're on.
Well, she took my closing comment. Let me just say thank you all again very much for coming. I had an opportunity to meet many of you as you were coming in. I hope that if you're still around a little later this evening, I can meet you, but certainly I'll look forward for those other opportunities as I see you on the streets or at these other meetings. But again, thank you for coming. We're all in this together, and hopefully you include us in your together, because that's really what it's about.
We're trying.
Thank you again.
Are you all going to be here Saturday?
Yes, we'll be here Saturday.
Same team.
Same PowerPoint. Same cards. We'll see you on Saturday. Have a good week.
We now return control of your television set to you. Until next week at this same time, when the control voice will take you to the outer limits.